Today we are going to get messages from Spirit for you at the time you view this video, and they want it to come out right away. Ooh, Wheel of Fortune at the center. This is very interesting. I'm going to see if anything else wants to come out. 3 more shuffles. That looks like it's it. Wonderful. Wow. This is a this feels like a powerful message, just like it immediately is hitting me. As I mentioned, that Wheel of Fortune at the center feels very, very noteworthy. So let me just sit with it for a moment and see if I can speak out the story that feels like wants to come through. So there's definitely something here about acknowledgement that you have been / are in the midst of really changing not only the trajectory of your own personal life, but it feels like the trajectory of your lineage. So even if you don't have children, that can still mean that certain things that maybe were really prevalent in your lineage up into this point is changing within you. And the reason I'm getting that so strongly, and there's this like very cohesive message that clearly wanted to come out, like it was like I barely shuffled and they flew out. And just so you know, I did do a pre-shuffle. So the cards were ready to talk. But the reason I say that is we start this kind of series that feels like it came out with the 10 of Cups in reverse. So to me, what that's speaking of is essentially like, so 10 of Cups upright can be this really beautiful energy of like happy home, happy life. It's a beautiful wish fulfillment card. Cups energy is like the energy is water energy, emotional energy. So there's like, when it's upright and it's positively aspected, it's a really beautiful energy of just like emotional satisfaction in your relationships, in your community, in your home, things of that nature. So it came up in reverse. So what that's telling me is that's kind of how this journey for you started. You were seeking that emotional satisfaction in your family, in your community, in your home, and you were struggling to find it. So you were like, something's off. You were earnestly wanting that, and it was like eluding you. And it seems like you then, whether you did this consciously or not, allowed that to propel you on a journey where you were determined to find it. And it seems I'm getting the sense, if you're tuning in, you just have been on this journey for a while. So you've been essentially doing some deep healing work. And what really, really wants to come through is that deep healing work is important and it's working. So regardless of, whether you're seeing the tangible benefits of it yet or not, the main message from Spirit is kudos to you. Good job. Keep going, because this is changing the trajectory of your life. Now, when it comes to our deep healing work, it can be frustrating because it often takes longer and is messier than we originally hoped. Do you know what I mean? And so that's like a big thing that I feel like wants to come through in this reading is you're not doing it wrong. This is just the nature of the quote unquote beast. And maybe I shouldn't call it a beast, but sometimes it feels like a beast, right? The beast of healing, like actually getting to some root level things and healing them. It can feel big and beastie. Is beastie a word? Is beastie an adjective? I have no idea. You get what I mean though. And so if you are in the midst of that, and it seems like you may be, the message here is like, again, like strong acknowledgement, kudos to you. You are not doing it wrong. You are doing it right. So much of the healing journey that before we enter the healing journey, so in the midst of the healing journey, so much that feels like it's going wrong through the lens of the person we were before we entered the healing journey is actually right. It's actually just the nature of the process. And I'm saying that because, I wish more people would have told me that when I was in the midst of some like deep, dark dive healing. You know what I mean? That like you couldn't have avoided this. The nature of healing is messy and uncertain and longer and more cyclical than we want to admit. And that's where essentially the beauty lies, because the person I was before I was really willing to do some deep healing, the reason she wasn't willing to do the deep healing is because she didn't want to sit with that uncertainty, and she didn't want to sit with that mess. Do you know what I mean? So I was using all these coping mechanisms to try to avoid that. And the more I surrendered to the nature of healing, the more the healing could actually happen. You know what I mean? And so if there's another message here from Spirit, it's not only kudos to you, keep going, you're doing it right, not wrong, but it's permission to surrender to the nature of healing. That if it's true healing, there's no way to control it. Do you know what I mean? Like, there is some deep, deep trusting in the uncertain and the unknown when it comes to true healing, because we're essentially allowing something bigger than ourselves, than our past selves who are using all these coping mechanisms to get our needs met. We're allowing something else to take over, right? A wisdom, you know, whether you call that God or Mother God or Spirit or universe or your higher self, regardless of the title that you give it, it's a relinquishing of the coping mechanisms we used in the past, and accepting of wisdom that is beyond our current knowing. Do you know what I mean? So there's an undoing in the process of healing that's very, very uncomfortable. And it's so important, because then what we do is we more and more shed the layers of the ego that has all these interesting ways of getting our needs met that are not healthy. And we can more align with the wisdom of Mother God, who has all these amazing and beautiful ways to orchestrate our needs getting met in really healthy ways, right? But there's that undoing process. And in my experience, I kind of, you know, there was this long period of time where I was I was wanting to be over here. I was essentially wanting the 10 of Cups. But by not realizing that there's a process to getting that, I was holding my 10 of Cups at an arm's length away, because I had to be willing to go through the process of getting it. Do you know what I mean? And more now, I've surrendered to the process of healing, the process of life, the process involved in my goals. I don't expect things to be overnight always. In the past, it was like one of my coping mechanisms, a sort of fantasy thinking was like, well, things could change overnight. Do you know what I mean? But the reality is, there's a process to all this, and there's beauty in that process, and there's natural unfolding in that process, and through a willingness to be in process, we actually build strong foundation. And so the irony is, like, the more willing we are to be with the process, the faster things can actually build, because we're adjusting at the foundational level, and we're prepping that foundation for more quicker and powerful upgrades, so to speak, building of the life that we want. And so there's definitely an acknowledgement that you've been willing to be with that process. Otherwise, this Wheel of Fortune wouldn't show up so prevalently upright in the middle of your reading. I know it not only is it just like showing up in the middle of your reading, but there's like an energy it's giving me that it's like almost like pulsing at the center. And so the work you've been doing is incredible. Keep going. And because, I haven't addressed this 10 of Wands, but it's leading to, I think, what you actually want, which is a liberation of burdens. So the 10 of Wands upright can be just this really, really heavy, difficult energy. The wands can represent just heavy burden that you're trying to carry. I mean, you can see in the card, she's like trying to carry these burdens with her. Or she is carrying these burdens with her, and and what's often said about the 10 of Wands is, these wands actually aren't hers to carry, and she is insisting on bringing them forward in her life, which is a really beautiful symbolism for what we all have to do in terms of really getting conscious about what we were conditioned to be, and who we were conditioned to be in the past by our friends, families, subcultures, and culture at large, and then deciding what we actually want to be. You know what I mean? And dissolving and healing and resolving the aspects of life and ourself, the beliefs and definitions we don't want to bring forward that are causing us to be heavy, and then deciding the ones that we do want to bring forward and or the ones we want to create and cultivate. And so this is just really beautiful sequence I'm seeing, because there seems to be this liberation of burden. And I'm definitely getting the sense that on the other end of this season that you're going through, of this liberation of burden, is when this Ten of Cups can more accurately flip upright. Or more accurately, what am I trying to say? Well, it's almost like I believe Ten of Cups is a natural energy. Emotional satisfaction, joy, happy home, happy life is natural, but we have to liberate the burdens in the way. Do you know what I mean? And so I just think this is such a beautiful sequence. So once again, what I'm seeing is that you had this strong, earnest desire for emotional satisfaction when it came to your everyday life. And just to be clear, Ten of Cups isn't like, good vibes only, toxic positivity. It's just like sincere, enduring emotional satisfaction with your relationships, with your community. That doesn't mean there isn't contrast and there isn't things to navigate, but there's not chronic dissatisfaction, right? In Ten of Cups upright, in a healthy, beautiful sense, it's chronic satisfaction with your everyday life, okay? So it seems like that was just not happening. It was eluding you and you were confused because you really wanted it, you were striving for it, and you thought it was possible, right? And then that confusion, as dark as that can feel, has led you to this more deep level healing work where you are literally changing the trajectory of your personal life and of your lineage. And through that, you are liberating the burdens that are in the way of this Ten of Cups. And I think as more and more of those burdens are liberated, glimpses and seasons and moments of this Ten of Cups will just naturally arise. And I think maybe you're beginning to experience that. If not, keep going. You will. You will begin to experience the naturalness of good. But we have to get these burdens out of the way. And that seems to be what you're doing. And it's a really, really beautiful sequence. It's a really beautiful story. It's a really beautiful journey that you've been willing to go on. And so, again, messages from Spirit are keep going. You're being acknowledged and supported in this. You are doing it right, not wrong. And the more you can surrender to the process of it all, which is messier and longer than we think it should be. And instead of putting shame on yourself personally for that, just realizing that is a natural part of the process, the paradox is the more it can speed up. And so I think in terms of advice, that might be what wants to be spoken out. Let yourself surrender to this process. It is a process, but it won't be forever. It won't be forever. But the more you can commit to it fully in this season, the more it can like kind of get what you need out of it. You know what I mean? And then move forward. And that is what you're doing. You're moving forward, even though it might seem like you're kind of like stuck in the midst. As you're stuck in the midst, you're still moving forward because that midst is what has to be alchemized. You know what I mean? That uncertainty and that darkness and those uncomfortable feelings, being with them is how we alchemize them instead of always trying to dart away. So it's not comfortable, but it is important and it is powerful, and you are already up to the task. So thank you so much for tuning in. Thank you so much for the internal emotional work that you're doing. I think it's what we all in our own ways are being called to do if we want to live healthier lives individually and as a collective. So I am energetically supporting you in this in terms of just like, if you are tuning in, if this message is for you, I can feel the collective that it's intended for, and I can resonate, and you're not alone. And I'm like, essentially, what am I trying to say? I just want to like send you a virtual / energetic hug. So you're not alone in this in terms of not only is Spirit supporting you, but there are so many others going through this similar process. And so kind of falling back on that, I think, is important too when you are questioning yourself or feel like you're doing it wrong. That's certainly not the case. So big hugs. Thank you for tuning in. Keep going.